So here's the kit sound, all been tracked. I've just stuck a gate and a tiny bit of EQ on the master bus. Right, kick drum. This is how I mic it, this is how I set up for recording. Here it is. So firstly, you kind of want to know what kind of sound you're going for on the record. It's going to be a very dead sounding track, so I've chucked loads of stuff in the kick drum. Like I've got a blanket, I've got some jackets, which I wish I remembered was in here because it's been really cold lately. Microphone, I'm using the trusty Audix D6. Sounds great, and I think it's the only mic I could actually get a full kick picture with. Sometimes I track it straight to the back of the drum and it gets really clicky and I get loads of my beat ahead, like on metal and rock tracks. And then sometimes you can go way out around here and you get a really warm, woolly, kind of flappy kick sound, which are like folk albums or anything like that. Those two techniques, often you might need another mic just to kind of get the full picture. I generally like to go somewhere in between, so normally where the kind of the metal goes on the kick, and then I only need to use one mic. I don't need to use like in and out or back and forth. In a production room where it's just, you know, a small, quite modest setup, that's great. There's our kick. Snare, we got a Ludwig 400, 1967. Sounds absolutely amazing. Most important thing when recording any drum, make sure it's tuned up right. If it sounds rubbish, just fix it. Make sure your cradle is not kind of like grabbing it too hard. You want to make sure it's kind of settling in. It's not compressing the instrument. Microphones, we have two Audix i5s just sat inside it. And make sure on the bottom, it's actually looking at the snare wire. This bottom mic is meant to get the snare wire, so make sure it's looking at it. If you have them set up parallel, you're going to have much less phase discrepancies. So I should be able to just flip that and it sounds great. That's it. That's snare top. So with the snare bottom. Toms, we have an Audix D2 on the rack and an Audix D4. A D4 on the floor. Just make sure they're tuned always. Tune them to the key of the track if you want to. Make sure they're dampened or opened. Whatever the track needs is what the toms need to be. The clips work lovely. Just kind of make sure they're pointing at the strike point. Ask your drummer just to kind of start hitting it, and wherever they're hitting it, that's where you want to aim the sticks at. What I always try and do is you think about them as like a photo lens, and you want the lens to be capturing the biggest picture of the drum possible. So try and make sure they're looking at the whole drum. They sound so like open. They sound like condensers to me, even though they're not, which is handy. Here's like a little tom fill. So hi-hat, I'm using the Audix SCX1, and I'm doing it underneath the hi-hat, which is a bit different to how it's normally done. And the reason is because I haven't got much height, floor space is quite limited, so I just wanted to be a bit more discreet with my miking. I always muff it up when I'm tracking anything brassy or harsh, and that's just because it kind of soothes the top end, and like about 3K just gets a bit softer and just sounds a bit nicer. Normally when you're recording underneath of a drum, so like bottom snare, bottom tom, or underneath the hi-hats, the phase is flipped, so probably start with the phase the other way around. Hi-hat. Last thing I did was the overheads, which I'm using the SCX 25s. These are really like natural sounding mics. A lot of people like them on like piano and like quite warm, big instruments. I love them on my overheads, especially with this mic technique, which is called the Recorder Man. And your striking point from the snare, and basically you make sure the mic is looking directly above the striking point of the snare, up. There you go. And then the other thing you do is you go behind your shoulder, the same thing. So your other mic should be behind your shoulder, 2 drumsticks away. There we go. And that is the Recorder Man. And the great thing about Recorder Man is it makes your snare in the center of the microphone's here, because the snare's hitting the signal, it's hitting it at the same time, which means it's going to be the same loudness. So when you're gaining it up, your snare will be kind of matched. And the way the phase works, your kick will be the same as well. So your snare and your kick will be in the center. Traditional overheads, it's a bit more kind of, your snare's normally a bit more lefty. And then with our overheads to give us a full picture. And that's a great little tight drum room sound. Really easy, just like a tiny bit of gate, just to come out, and like a little dip, about 600, but that's just my room basically. And that's like a really nice room sound.